Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, and today I am delighted to be joined by two conversational AI experts to talk through some of the most exciting companies within the market and what makes them stand out within such a crowded space. Yesterday, I am delighted to be joined by Bradley Metrock, CEO of Project Voice, and James Poulter, CEO of Vixen Labs. It's great to have you both with me, and we'll kind of get straight into the meat of the conversation, I think. And one quick disclaimer before we start talking about companies: there's so many excellent, innovative companies in this space. So apologies if we don't mention kind of any vendor that's maybe top of your mind. But we've kind of had a little chat beforehand and come up with five companies that are exciting us at the moment. And first on our list was Vonage. I don't know, James, if you want to talk to me why you think why you wanted to pick Vonage.
Yeah, sure. So I thought when you asked us to kind of think about who are the people that are making waves in this space, there's so many different ways you can kind of take this. And the overarching trend is that most of these businesses that we'll discuss today, with exception maybe of a couple of the more recent ones that Bradley and team are working with, have made moves from other parts of the kind of voice or conversational space in recent years to now provide something that really fits the purpose of the AI landscape that we're working within now. Vonage is a classic case in that, having come from the broad telephony background and provide a lot of the underlying systems for many years that have supported IVR systems and solutions, to now provide a much more complex suite of services in API format, mostly for video, for chat, for voice, and across all platforms. So now providing it not just for IVRs, but also to enable things like smart speakers, building applications for voice applications in that domain, as well as also powering chat and also messaging platforms. We've done some work with them over recent weeks and months, looking at particular use cases around the Meta platform, for example, thinking about Instagram messaging. And obviously, I'm sure Threads at some point or other will enter the fray, even though it's not there just yet. So I think the interesting thing with Vonage and those that are playing in that space alongside them is that they're all having to make the move now to provide APIs and services that will enable us to build these next generation AI solutions, many of which will be powered by large language models. Maybe they will not have traditional UX flows that we've traditionally thought of in the past, those kind of big kind of decision tree diagrams that many of us have seen if you've worked in this space for some time. And a lot more of this is going to be dependent on data sources and where you get that data routed to you from. And that's where APIs, I think, from the folks like Vonage and others like Twilio and others playing in that space become all the more important, right? Because trying to make sure that you've got the right plumbing essentially behind these applications, regardless of where the front end experience is one of the most crucial parts. So I think that's why we highlighted Vonage as one of those key partners to look at who are really making moves in the space.
Yeah, I think Vonage is definitely a good company to look out for, especially with the Ericsson acquisition. I think there's lots of interesting things going on there. I've seen their work with 5G too, and how they're using Ericsson's networks to kind of for the increased mobility within their platform. I think it's definitely an innovative brand and one that I want to keep my eye on. As is Voiceflow, which you've also picked out for us, James. What made you choose Voiceflow?
Well, I mean, aside from having kind of big respect for the team, and I know Bradley knows them well as well, Braden and the guys there have been running that business for a number of years now, and really kind of were one of the people to really come out in the voice smart speaker kind of AI space a number of years back. I think one of the things that I'm impressed by with what they're doing, but also it speaks to this larger trend we were just discussing, is that they've really made the move from just being the platform that you might build and prototype smart speakers and chatbot experiences in the kind of old world, which is odd to refer to it that way because it's not very old, and it's certainly not been around for very long, and this shift has happened very quickly. But they've really made big moves to implement both large language models and AI into their platform itself, but also they're now enabling other people to build things, tools, systems, solutions on top of that platform, which I think is an interesting move from them, and probably quite a crucial one as well. As I mentioned, we're seeing large language models potentially upend the way in which we've traditionally thought about designing these experiences, where they're quite linear, quite driven by the next turn in the conversation being orchestrated quite quite specifically to being much more of an open dialogue and an ability to have that back and forth conversation with an agent, whether that's on voice, whether it's in IVR or in a chat solution. And the guys at Voiceflow have really made moves to make that happen. I think particularly looking at the way in which they're using prompt chaining and being able to link together different parts of their solution to create these much more fluid and dynamic organic bots really to be able to talk to is really interesting, and the ability to now fully deploy to the platforms that you want to get onto, no longer just being in that kind of prototyping space. So yeah, big credit to them. I know they're really pushing hard to kind of build the platform out, and I think we've definitely one to pay attention to, particularly if you're looking to get started really quickly with large language models and with building for voice. I would definitely recommend starting over there with Voiceflow.
It actually reminds me of the conversation we had previously in terms of how you leverage large language models and how brands are starting to allow you to they're giving you the cake and you're kind of doing the icing over the top sort of thing. But there's lots of other really great points there about Voiceflow. And I just kind of maybe want to speak about your third and final company that you've put forward for this list now, which is Veritone. What can you tell us about Veritone?
Well, so we've worked with the guys at Veritone for a number of years now as a strategic partner at Vixen Labs, and deployed some of their solutions both in their voice capabilities with synthetic voice production, and also looked at a number of their discovery products that allow for data analysis and management. The thing that I think is interesting with Veritone and the team that they're building out there is they've been very heavy on the acquisition front for a number of years, buying up smaller solutions, bolting things into their overall package of the overall Veritone platform, which I think is one of the most robust AI platforms, certainly at the moment, particularly for media and entertainment, and also for government and other verticals that are looking to deploy these types of technologies, particularly in regulated spaces. So Veritone, I think, interesting because they have such a broad suite of solutions. The thing that I think is most interesting as of late, and particularly to this conversation, is their generative AI platforms that they're building themselves. So bringing together some of those capabilities that we've seen with those acquisitions that they have made, both in terms of synthetic voice production, but also TTS and speech-to-text technologies, as well as also some of the other, I suppose, avatar-related tools that they've been producing as well with the acquisitions that they've made of PandoLogic, for example. So that as a comprehensive suite of solutions, particularly for the enterprise, and most certainly in that media and entertainment or governmental spaces, feels like a really good partner to be looking at. And like I say, we've worked with them for a couple of years now on the Voice Consumer Index, which is our kind of major piece of research that we do every year. And I think that they've seen, from looking at the data we've seen there as well, that there's going to be a lot of potential growth in that market for them with particularly synthetic content production. So Veritone definitely one to watch. And I think all three of those partners that I mentioned there, they all have this thing in common, which again is that they have all made this shift from this more traditional voice landscape into this broader large language model and generative space. And we're intrigued to see where they go next.
I think that's a particularly interesting trend that you've just picked up on in the end there. I don't know, Bradley, maybe I'll pass over to you to comment on all those three companies that James has mentioned. Was there anything in there as well that you also found particularly interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all interesting. I think those three companies are fantastic examples of, as James said, companies that sort of came out of the old world of being voice oriented and now have had to recalibrate. And they're not alone. Everybody's had to do that, and it's been a very good measurement stick for how good the CEO and the management team is on how you've been able to ride that wave. And I might add, it's not over. So just as soon as ChatGPT and OpenAI arrived and sort of set this new framework in place with these LLMs, there's going to be something else, and then there's going to be something else. The agility that's required on behalf of companies at the top these days is it's not something that we've seen. I haven't seen it. I don't think any of us have seen it in our lifetime. So it's not a technological problem. It's a management problem. And it requires having the right people and the right culture in these organizations. And I don't know Vonage as well, but I can definitely speak for Veritone and Voiceflow, that both of them possess that attribute that's allowed them to sort of ride the wave. With a lot of what we do, at Project Voice Capital Partners on the venture capital side, we're seeing all sorts of companies that, they don't have the identity crisis, so to speak, where they need to transition from one aptitude to another and maintaining authenticity the whole time. But they still have the same problem everybody else does of how are we going to leverage this LLM stuff in a way that achieves product market fit. And the two companies that that I have to raise today are part of our second quarter capital deployment. And they've managed to do that, and we're proud of them for that. The first one is Jade, Jaid, based in the UK, but with a heavy presence in New York City, that has applied conversational AI to the investment management sort of upper end financial services domain. And then the other one is Inpris, which is based in Israel, that has applied their avatar technology, but more broadly, their conversational AI capabilities to customer service as well, really carving a niche out for themselves in the automotive sector. So, we're seeing a lot of the same stuff, but I just want to sort of call out two smaller companies that we feel have done a good job.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of mentioned the agility there kind of throughout and how that's becoming more to the forefront. And, it goes back to a couple of about Vonage and Voiceflow. James mentioned the kind of how they're working towards smart speakers, and that kind of was so big 5 years ago, and then it kind of that went down a bit, and now it's kind of coming back to the fore too, by the sounds of it. So it's fascinating to see how these trends sort of ebb and flow, and managing that must be so difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, just to, it's you look at some of the success stories, like you look at somebody like Synthesia, where they've created an excellent culture within that company. It's rare. I mean, you're always going to have, law of averages, you're going to have some people flush out, if you have X number of people, but the culture of the company is strong. And then you contrast that to Google, which is having all kinds of cultural problems inside the organization, and it's really debilitating and costing them a lot of money daily. And you see the direction that you need to try to go in. And so we're blessed to have a lot of great companies in this space, and a lot of different approaches to the problem. And so it's fun to watch.
I'm just going to say, Charlie, I think I would reflect on the two that Bradley's also brought there, and particularly Jade as an example. Is I think one of the big things we will see in the coming weeks and months is that more and more of this verticalization going on. So you've got people like Jade who are specifically looking at conversational AI within that kind of like financial investment, kind of like domain. And I think that that's one of the big things that we've typically seen in other technology revolutions, whether that's social media, whether that's in web and mobile tech, and certainly in terms of other SaaS platforms, is that once you kind of go broad with the kind of overall, say, conversational AI as that breadth, you begin to then start seeing these kind of vertical solutions begin to emerge. And that's because when you're talking about something as broad as this AI suite that we're talking about, whether that's generative models, whether that's large language models, whether it's general purpose AIs, foundation models, etc., naturally you kind of get that breadth. Everyone's excited about those general use cases, right? Your chat GPTs, your mid journeys, etc. Then you'll begin to see this kind of verticalization emerge, because naturally there's going to have to be some customization for clients to use in each of these different spaces. So I think that's one of the big things that as you look across these examples we've talked to, I'm intrigued to see where the next layer comes in, which is maybe more like the Jades, and no wonder that they're in that kind of space where Project Voice are able to kind of deploy that funding, because we're going to see more of this verticalization come, and that next wave of companies I think will be serving much more specific niches than necessarily trying to serve be the platform for everybody. So I think that's just an observation across the board.
Lots of really good stuff there, and it'll be interesting actually to see those companies as they kind of hit the stage of Project Voice maybe next year, to kind of talk through that vertical specific strategy. And I think there's so much good stuff that we've discussed in there, picked out so many trends. So I really appreciate you both coming on to join us. I'll put a link to all the project voice stuff that you have going on, Bradley, and your index as well, James, so viewers can go and check those out too, as discussed. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me today.
Honored to be part of your show.
Lovely to see you both.
Excellent. And thank you also to everybody for watching. Bye for now.